and adopted as Resolution 2817 in the year 2026. I will now give the floor to those members of the council who wish to make statements after the vote. I give the floor to the representative of Bahrain.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. لقد أكد مجلس الأمن اليوم من خلال اعتماده هذا القرار موقفا واضحا يرفض الاعتداءات التي استهدفت دولنا والتزامه بصون السلم والأمن الدوليين. في البداية تود مملكة البحرين بالنيابة عن دول مجلس التعاون لدول الخليج العربية، وهي دولة الإمارات العربية المتحدة وسلطنة عمان ودولة قطر ودولة الكويت والمملكة العربية السعودية وبلاد مملكة البحرين، بالإضافة إلى المملكة الأردنية الهاشمية، أن تتقدم بخالص الشكر والتقدير لدولة الرئاسة لهذا الشهر وفد الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية على سرعة الاستجابة لعقد هذه الجلسة الهامة. كما نشكر الدول الأعضاء في المجلس الأمن الذين صوتوا لصالح اعتماد القرار المقدم إلى المجلس. كما نعرب عن امتناننا العميق لجميع الدول الأعضاء بالأمم المتحدة والتي شاركت في رعاية هذا القرار، والتي بلغ عددها 135 دولة، حيث أن هذا الدعم الواسع من المجتمع الدولي يعكس إدراكا جماعيا لخطورة العدوان الإيراني الغاشم الذي تعرضت له بلداننا مملكة البحرين ودول مجلس التعاون لدول الخليج العربية والمملكة الأردنية الهاشمية خلال 12 يوما الماضية. سيد الرئيس، أن اعتماد هذا القرار اليوم يمثل رسالة واضحة وموحدة من مجلس الأمن بأن الاعتداءات الصاروخية والهجمات بالطائرات المسيرة التي شنتها ولا تزال تشنها الجمهورية الإسلامية الإيرانية، والتي استهدفت عددا من دول المنطقة بما في ذلك بلاد مملكة البحرين، هي أعمال مرفوضة تشكل انتهاكا صارخا لميثاق الأمم المتحدة وللقواعد الأساسية للقانون الدولي ومبادئ حسن الجوار. سيد الرئيس، لقد شهدت منطقتنا خلال الأيام الماضية سلسلة من الاعتداءات الآثمة التي استهدفت منشآت مدنية وبنية تحتية ومناطق سكنية في عدد من دول المنطقة، وأسفرت عن سقوط ضحايا وإصابات بين المدنيين الأبرياء. ويؤكد اعتماد المجلس لهذا القرار اليوم أن المجتمع الدولي يقف صفا واحدا في مواجهة هذه الأعمال العدائية، وأن أمن المنطقة واستقرارها يشكلان جزءا لا يتجزأ من منظومة الأمن والسلم. كما أن هذه المنطقة تمثل شريانا حيويا للاقتصاد العالمي وممرا أساسيا للتجارة الدولية وسلاسل الإمداد والطاقة. وقد أكد المجلس في القرار الذي اعتمده اليوم وكذلك في قرارات سابقة على الأهمية الحيوية لمنطقة الخليج العربي للاستقرار الاقتصادي العالمي وضرورة صون أمن الملاحة والمنشآت الحيوية فيها. وعليه فإن ضمان أمن هذه المنطقة لا يعد مسألة إقليمية فحسب، بل مسؤولية دولية مشتركة ترتبط ارتباطا وثيقا باستقرار الاقتصاد العالمي وأمن الطاقة والتجارة الدولية. سيد الرئيس، إن مملكة البحرين ودول مجلس التعاون لدول الخليج العربية والمملكة الأردنية الهاشمية تؤكد مجددا حقها الكامل والأصيل في الدفاع عن نفسها واتخاذ جميع التدابير اللازمة لحماية سيادتها وسلامة أراضيها وفقا للمادة 51 من ميثاق الأمم المتحدة وفي إطار القانون الدولي. سيد الرئيس، وإننا إذ نعرب عن التقدير لموقف مجلس الأمن، نود في هذه المناسبة أن نتوجه بالتحية والتقدير إلى رجال قوة دفاع البحرين ومنتسبي وزارة الداخلية وكافة الجهات العسكرية والأمنية في المملكة الذين أثبتوا أعلى درجات الكفاءة والجاهزية في التصدي لهذه الهجمات والدفاع عن أراضي المملكة وسلامة مواطنيها والمقيمين فيها. كما نتوجه بالتحية والتقدير إلى كافة القوات العسكرية والأمنية في دول مجلس التعاون لدول الخليج العربية والمملكة الأردنية الهاشمية، وكذلك للقوات الحليفة التي تعمل بكفاءة وجاهزية عالية قل نظيرها وبروح من التضامن والمسؤولية المشتركة لحماية أمن واستقرار الخليج العربي وصون سلامة شعوبه. سيد الرئيس، إن اعتماد هذا القرار اليوم يعكس موقفا واضحا من المجتمع الدولي في الوقوف بحزم في مواجهة التهديدات التي تطال الأمن الإقليمي والدولي، ويعكس التزام مجلس الأمن بالاطلاع بمسؤولياته في صون السلم والاستقرار الدولي، كما يبعث برسالة واضحة مفادها أن المجتمع الدولي يتخذ موقفا حازما في رفض هذه الأعمال العدائية الإيرانية الآثمة التي تستهدف الدول ذات السيادة وتهدد أمن شعوبها واستقرارها، ولا سيما في منطقة ذات أهمية استراتيجية للاقتصاد العالمي وأمن الطاقة والتجارة الدولية، وهو ما أكد عليه قرار مجلس الأمن رقم 552 الذي شدد على الأهمية الحيوية لمنطقة الخليج للاستقرار الاقتصادي العالمي وحرية الملاحة الدولية. في الختام، تؤكد مملكة البحرين التزامها الراسخ بمقاصد ومبادئ ميثاق الأمم المتحدة، كما تؤكد استمرارها في العمل مع شركائها الإقليميين والدوليين لتعزيز الأمن والاستقرار في المنطقة وصون ما عرف عن دولنا من أمن وأمان وازدهار، بالرغم من مساعي من لا يشاطرنا هذا المسار في إبعادنا عنه. وشكرا سيد الرئيس.
I thank the representative of Bahrain for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom, of France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, la France a voté en faveur du projet de résolution présenté par Bahreïn au nom des États du Conseil de coopération du Golfe et de la Jordanie. Nous avons soutenu et coparrainé ce projet avec près de 135 pays. 135 pays, c'est-à-dire une écrasante majorité des membres de notre organisation. Puissant message à l'Iran. Nous l'avons adopté parce qu'il porte une condamnation nécessaire par le Conseil de sécurité des frappes indiscriminées menées par l'Iran contre ses voisins régionaux depuis une dizaine de jours. Le Moyen-Orient, une fois encore, est plongé dans la guerre. Cette guerre, porteuse de risques graves pour la sécurité régionale, doit cesser au plus vite. Seul le respect du droit international et la diplomatie peuvent assurer de façon durable la sécurité et la stabilité de la région. Or, dans cette escalade et l'extension de cette guerre, l'Iran a pris une responsabilité majeure. Je ne m'étendrai pas ici sur les responsabilités liées aux menaces de long terme que fait peser l'Iran sur la région et sur le monde, qu'il s'agisse des risques de prolifération liés à son programme nucléaire, du développement de son programme balistique ou du soutien à ses milices qu'il appuie, finance et entraîne dans la région. Le Conseil reste saisi de ces menaces et doit appliquer les régimes de sanctions qu'il a adoptés pour répondre à certaines d'entre elles. Nous reviendrons notamment sur les menaces relatives au programme nucléaire et balistique iranien lors de la réunion sur le comité 1737 qui doit se tenir prochainement. En faisant le choix dès le 28 février d'attaquer ses voisins, l'Arabie saoudite, Bahreïn, les Émirats arabes unis, la Jordanie, le Koweït, Oman, le Qatar, qui ne le menaçaient pas, l'Iran porte une responsabilité grave dans l'escalade actuelle. Plusieurs de ces États avaient même activement contribué dans les semaines précédentes à la reprise des négociations entre l'Iran et les États-Unis sur le dossier nucléaire et sont aujourd'hui frappés par les missiles balistiques et les drones iraniens. En bloquant le détroit d'Ormuz, l'Iran se rend aussi coupable d'une grave atteinte à la liberté de circulation maritime et prend en otage l'économie mondiale. Le régime iranien recherche l'extension et la prolongation du conflit parce qu'il voit dans cette stratégie de chaos sa meilleure chance de survie. Le Conseil se devait d'entendre la voix des États de la région et de condamner les frappes indiscriminées de l'Iran qui contribuent à l'escalade et compromettent la stabilité de la région ainsi que la sécurité du trafic maritime mondial. Monsieur le Président, nous nous réjouissons que le Conseil ait pu aujourd'hui adopter sans opposition la résolution 2817 et adresser ainsi un message fort à l'Iran pour l'appeler à mettre fin à ses activités déstabilisatrices contre ses voisins. L'Iran doit entendre ce puissant message de la communauté internationale et du Conseil de sécurité. Il doit cesser de nourrir l'escalade du conflit, se conformer à ses obligations internationales et entrer enfin dans des négociations sérieuses pour traiter les préoccupations liées à son programme nucléaire, à ses activités balistiques, ainsi qu'à son rôle régional. Seule une solution diplomatique répondra de façon viable à ces questions cruciales pour l'avenir de la région et la sécurité internationale. La France, avec ses partenaires européens, reste disposée à travailler pour parvenir à un accord robuste, vérifiable et durable sur ces questions. Je vous remercie.
I thank the representative of France for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. Colleagues, in adopting this resolution, the Council sends a clear message of condemnation of Iran's reckless attacks against the Gulf states and Jordan. It is right that this Council wholeheartedly condemns Iran's attacks, which pose a serious threat to our partners in the Gulf and to Jordan, and risk further regional and global conflagration. It is also right that the Council reiterates its support for the territorial integrity, sovereignty, and political independence of the Gulf states and Jordan. We welcome Bahrain's leadership on this important resolution, even as they continue to face attacks against civilian infrastructure, resulting in injuries and the loss of life. The United Kingdom is steadfast in our support for the security of the Gulf states and Jordan. We have been participating in coordinated regional defensive operations. We will continue to support them and have strengthened our capabilities in the region to increase our defensive support to our partners in the Gulf and beyond. But we want to see an end to these attacks. That is why we co-sponsored and voted for this resolution. This resolution imposes important obligations on Iran to immediately cease all attacks against Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Jordan, and provocation or threats against neighboring states, including through its proxies. Iran must comply with its obligations under international law, including international humanitarian law. The exercise of navigational rights and freedoms by merchant and commercial vessels, in accordance with international law, must also be respected. Iran's unacceptable attacks against ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz threaten maritime security and the safety of seafarers. The UK's position on Iran is clear. Iran must cease these attacks and must not threaten the region or wider international security. Our collective priority must be to secure long-term stability in the region and the protection of civilian life. That is what the UK government has been focusing on, and we will continue to do so with our partners, including in this Council. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Greece.
Thank you, Mr. President. Greece voted in favor of the resolution introduced by Bahrain on behalf of the GCC countries and Jordan, adding its voice of support to the countries in the Gulf that have been targeted by Iran in an unprecedented way. Civilians have been hit, children have been killed, energy infrastructure has been destroyed, and critical maritime routes affected. But most importantly, mutual distrust is now a permanent state of mind in the region's politics and everyday life. This is unacceptable. We have strongly condemned from the very beginning the Iranian strikes in Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates and elsewhere. We are therefore pleased to be one of the first member states to co-sponsor this resolution alongside a large part of the international community. This is a moment in which the voice of the international community is being heard loud and clear in the Security Council. Mr. President, colleagues, at the same time, the risks for regional and international peace and security remain exceptionally high, and we are deeply concerned by the continuing military escalation in the region. All parties must exercise maximum restraint, prevent a further spiral of violence, and work urgently to reopen credible channels of dialogue in order to achieve a durable, negotiated solution. Absent a diplomatic solution, we will face a protracted conflict and crisis with growing regional and international consequences for all. As an elected member of this Council, we reiterate, therefore, our call for de-escalation, dialogue, and diplomacy. Our aim should be to find ways to return to substantial negotiations towards a peaceful settlement in line with international law and the UN Charter. Finally, as this resolution makes clear, and as a leading maritime and shipping nation, we are flagging the alarming consequences of this conflict on global trade and energy supply. The Straits of Hormuz must open again and freedom of navigation must be restored without delay. As we have said time and again, failure is not an option. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Greece for her statement. I give the floor to the representative of Pakistan.
Thank you, Mr. President. The consequences of the conflict that we are witnessing right now are clear, and everyone is impacted. This is a conflict that should never have happened. The conflict and its disastrous fallouts are no more isolated. The regional and global dimensions are obvious. And when international law is violated, peace is imperiled and not advanced. We call for immediate and complete cessation of hostilities and return to the dialogue table. Only a peaceful settlement will serve everyone's interest. It is unfortunate that despite the grave threat faced by the region, the Council could not unify behind a comprehensive response to end the conflict. That's the sad reality. Yet, it was important to act, for there were genuine concerns that needed to be addressed. Under the circumstances, we had two proposed draft resolutions before us. I thank the representatives of Bahrain and the Russian Federation for presenting the respective draft resolutions. And Pakistan supports both the draft resolutions. Our positive vote on the draft resolution introduced by Bahrain signifies the affirmation of Pakistan's strong solidarity with the brotherly countries of Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Jordan. It also serves to underscore our condemnation of all the unwarranted attacks faced by them, especially those targeting civilians, civilian objects, and critical civilian infrastructure. I reiterate Pakistan's complete support for the territorial integrity, sovereignty, and political independence of all these countries. As demanded by the resolution just adopted, we hope that the attacks on their territory will cease immediately and the navigational rights and freedoms in the Strait of Hormuz will not be undermined. It is most unfortunate that the fraternal states of Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Jordan came under attacks despite all along supporting dialogue, facilitating diplomatic engagement, and advocating avoidance of escalation during the period of heightened tensions and military activity in the run-up to the start of this conflict. These countries should not have had to face the worst consequences of war. Pakistan stands in complete solidarity with their governments and people. President, Pakistan also views favorably the draft resolution tabled by the Russian Federation that is also contextualized in the framework of the UN Charter and has its primary focus on urging the parties to stop military activities, refrain from further escalation, and return to negotiations, something that is consistent with Pakistan's overall position. The deplorable turn of events unfolding in the region, from the initiation of unwarranted attacks on the Islamic Republic of Iran on February 28th, which Pakistan also condemned, have seriously jeopardized international peace and security, given rise to grave consequences, and unnecessarily embroiled the entire region. As a brotherly neighboring country, Pakistan supports the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Iran. We are deeply concerned by the instability in Iran. These disturbing developments also carry profound socio-economic and humanitarian repercussions. As a neighboring country, Pakistan has not remained immune from these impacts. At least 2 Pakistani nationals lost their lives in attacks on the UAE. Millions of other Pakistanis that reside in the Gulf countries remain in harm's way. Our fuel supplies have been seriously hampered, obliging the government to take extraordinary measures for conserving the use of oil, gas, and electricity. Several essential aviation links have been severed, while others face disruptions. President, Pakistan seeks an immediate end to this conflict that has caused immense humanitarian suffering in all countries affected by the missile and drone strikes on schools, residential areas, oil and port facilities, water desalination plants, and civic infrastructure. We offer our deepest condolences on the tragic loss of life of civilians caught in the middle of the conflict and extend our sympathies to the affected families and communities. It was particularly heart-wrenching to see innocent school children perish at an elementary school in Menab. Any use of force outside the bounds of the UN Charter is unlawful and condemnable. It is also incumbent upon all parties to strictly comply with international humanitarian law in the conduct of hostilities. We call for a swift return to dialogue and diplomacy to pursue a peaceful resolution of all contentious issues in accordance with the rights, obligations, and responsibilities of the parties concerned. Sincere commitment and genuine political will are required to restore trust and build the foundations of peaceful coexistence through mutual accommodation and respect. One country of the region must not be allowed to dictate the terms in its neighborhood of what it considers acceptable and what constitutes a threat, seeking absolute security for itself while occupying Palestinian and Arab territories and destabilizing, coercing, and threatening the rest, ultimately dragging everyone into conflict and confrontation. Mr. President, we welcome and deeply appreciate the sincere efforts being made by various countries to mediate between the warring parties. The leadership of Pakistan has also remained in close contact with our neighbors, friends, and partners throughout the region and beyond, and continues to play a constructive role in that regard. I conclude by reiterating Pakistan's call for all sides to immediately de-escalate, exercise maximum restraint, desist from undertaking further attacks, and urgently resume diplomacy for a negotiated, lasting resolution to this crisis. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Pakistan for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Panama.
Gracias, señor presidente. Pese a los reiterados llamados de la comunidad internacional a establecer un cese inmediato de las hostilidades por parte de todos los actores involucrados, el conflicto se mantiene vigente y peligroso. Su prolongación no solo agrava la situación humanitaria, sino que también incrementa la incertidumbre y la inestabilidad en la región y en el mundo. En este contexto, resulta preocupante la retórica empleada por Irán para justificar acciones que bajo el argumento de represalias han derivado en ataques contra países vecinos de la región y en el cierre de una de las vías marítimas más importantes del mundo, afectando la economía global. Estas naciones han manifestado de manera clara y reiterada su intención de mantenerse al margen de una confrontación que no iniciaron, por lo que cualquier agresión dirigida hacia ellas supone una peligrosa e injustificada ampliación del conflicto y un riesgo adicional para la paz y la seguridad del mundo. En ese sentido, nuestro apoyo a la resolución presentada por Bahrein en nombre de los países del Consejo de Cooperación del Golfo y Jordania y copatronizada por 135 países, respondió al reconocimiento de las legítimas preocupaciones de los estados directamente afectados por la escalada y a la preocupación de la comunidad internacional en general. La iniciativa reafirma la necesidad de los países del Consejo de Cooperación del Golfo y Jordania de preservar su seguridad y soberanía, así como su decisión de no verse involucrados directa ni indirectamente en una guerra que no han provocado ni desean intensificar. Muchas gracias.
I thank the representative of Panama for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of China.
主席，当前海湾地区局势急剧升温，整个中东局势有可能被推向危险的深渊。中方对此深表关切。美国和以色列未经联合国安理会授权，在伊美谈判正在进行当中，对伊朗发动武力袭击，明显违反联合国宪章宗旨原则和国际关系基本准则。这场战争的缘起缺乏正当性与合法性，持续下去有百害而无一利。避免局势恶化的根源在于美以停止军事行动。同时，海湾阿拉伯国家的主权、安全和领土完整也应得到充分尊重。为此，我们不认同伊朗对海湾阿拉伯国家的攻击，谴责一切无差别攻击无辜平民和非军事目标的行为。中方支持海湾阿拉伯国家维护国家安全的正当诉求，赞赏和支持他们保持克制，支持地区国家继续致力于通过外交方式化解争端。中方高度重视巴林代表海合会国家和约旦提出的这份决议草案，完全理解海湾阿拉伯国家的重大关切，强烈敦促交战国切实尊重非交战国主权和安全。中方建设性地参与了磋商，遗憾的是，决议草案未能全面平衡反映冲突的根源和全貌。中方提出的合理建议没有得到充分采纳，因此中方不得不投下弃权票。主席，战火延宕升级不符合任何一方利益，受害的只能是地区人民。中方再次呼吁立即停止军事行动，防止局势轮番升级，避免战火外溢蔓延。当事方应尽快重返对话谈判的正确轨道，通过平等对话解决分歧。 中方始终是维护和平的力量。王毅外长同地区国家等多国外长密集通话，中国政府中东问题特使正在中东地区穿梭访问，积极劝和止战。中方愿继续同中东国家和国际社会一道，凝聚促和努力，推动中东地区早日恢复和平稳定。谢谢主席。
I thank the representative of China for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Liberia.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have the honor to speak on behalf of the A3, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Somalia, and my own country, Liberia. We voted in favor of this resolution. Our decision reflects our principled commitment to diplomacy, dialogue, de-escalation, and respect for international law as the only viable path to peace and stability in the Middle East. The A3 remains gravely concerned by the continued missile and drone attacks directed against the sovereign territories of Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and the United Arab Emirates, just to name a few. These actions risk widening an already dangerous regional crisis, threatening lives and undermining broader international peace and security. We further reiterate that all member states must respect their obligations under the Charter, which unequivocally prohibits the threat or use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state. The A3 underscores that this Council must not endorse interpretations of Article 51 that expand the right of self-defense beyond these core principles or that risk eroding long-standing constraints on the use of force. We call for restraint, urgent de-escalation, and sustained dialogue, and to avoid action that could escalate tensions or threaten, I should say, further threaten regional peace and stability. We are also concerned by actions that impede freedom of navigation or threaten maritime security in international waterways all around the world. Such conduct carries severe global humanitarian, economic, and energy security consequences and must cease. The A3 further stresses the urgent need to return to negotiations on the Iranian nuclear program. A credible diplomatic process remains essential to preventing further escalation and to achieving sustainable peace and security in the region. It is important to seize this moment to redouble our efforts to de-escalate and support a diplomatic process that can deliver peace, stability, and security for all states in the Middle East. To conclude, Mr. President, the A3 stands ready to support all efforts within this Council and in cooperation with regional and international partners to facilitate dialogue, reduce tensions, and promote a peaceful, inclusive, and lasting resolution to the situation in the Middle East. We reaffirm our solidarity with the peoples of the region and our unwavering commitment to the Charter and to international peace and security. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Liberia for the statement, and I give the floor to the representative of Latvia.
Thank you, President. Latvia voted in favor and co-sponsored the resolution submitted by Bahrain on behalf of the states of the Gulf Cooperation Council and Jordan. We express our full solidarity with Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, and other affected countries that are victims of the unprovoked attacks by the Iranian regime. We appreciate the Council listening to their concerns, just as it should listen to other states facing unprovoked aggression. Latvia welcomes the clear focus of the resolution on respect for the United Nations Charter and international law, as well as the timely description of violations of these fundamental principles by the Iranian regime. We recall that these aggressive and destabilizing acts follow a long series of attempts by the Iranian regime and its proxies to challenge international law and both regional and global peace and security. And we underline the constructive and reasoned manner in which this resolution was drafted and commend the good work of Bahrain amid this trying time of unjust aggression. It is a very clear and strong message of this Council, supported by 135 UN member states, and we welcome its adoption. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Latvia for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Colombia.
Señor Presidente, Colombia observa con profunda preocupación la situación en Medio Oriente y la creciente espiral de violencia derivada de las agresiones unilaterales e injustificadas en toda la región, incluyendo la más reciente agresión ilegal e irresponsable contra la República Islámica de Irán, adelantada por Estados Unidos e Israel. Esta es una fase más del genocidio desatado por el régimen de Netanyahu hace más de 2 años contra el pueblo palestino y una expresión de un proyecto expansionista, de la violación reiterada y sistemática del derecho internacional y de la falta de consecuencias y rendición de cuentas de los responsables. Colombia nota también con enorme preocupación los ataques e intentos de invasión contra el territorio soberano del Líbano y otros estados de la región. Mi delegación ha decidido votar a favor de esta resolución en muestra de la solidaridad con Arabia Saudita, Bahrein, Qatar, Emiratos Árabes Unidos, Jordania, Kuwait y Omán, pero hace este salvamento de voto en virtud de su histórica posición multilateral de principios en apego al derecho internacional y la Carta de las Naciones Unidas. Reafirmamos el apoyo a la soberanía, integridad territorial e independencia política de todos los países de la región. Colombia considera que lo que la región necesita con urgencia es el cese inmediato de las hostilidades, detener la espiral de violencia y abrir espacio a un proceso de diálogo amplio entre los sectores regionales que permita abordar las causas de esta crisis y avanzar hacia una solución política sostenible y duradera para el Medio Oriente. Muchas gracias.
I thank the representative of Colombia for her statement. I give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
Thank you, Mr. President, and let me also thank the Kingdom of Bahrain for its efforts as penholder on this draft resolution. The large number of co-sponsors from within this Council and across the whole membership demonstrates the collective desire to end Iran's strikes against countries in the region and bring peace to the Middle East, and it sends a powerful message. Mr. President, Denmark is deeply concerned by the continued escalation of the situation in the Middle East. In a short time, we have seen a large number of countries in the Gulf, the Middle East, and Europe being drawn into this conflict that they have no stakes in. Every day passing, we are witnessing a further destabilization of the already volatile and tense situation. We call for maximum restraint, protection of civilians, and respect for international law, including international humanitarian law. We call for diplomatic efforts to reduce tensions. Denmark strongly condemns Iran's continued attacks on countries in the region. We express our full solidarity with all the countries concerned. Mr. President, at this crucial moment, it is imperative to listen to the voices of the region. Iran must immediately cease its attacks and respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states and ensure maritime security and respect for the freedom of navigation. This is why Denmark co-sponsored and voted in favor of this resolution, which we are pleased the Council has adopted. Denmark remains committed to safeguarding peace, security, and stability in the Middle East. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Denmark for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Господин председатель, Российская Федерация воздержалась при голосовании по предложенному Бахрейном проекту резолюции, поскольку он носит крайне несбалансированный характер и не отвечает целям поддержания международного мира и безопасности. Хотим сразу оговориться. Мы с пониманием и сожалением относимся к ситуации, в которой сегодня находятся ближневосточные страны. Более того, Россия считает неприемлемыми удары по территории и особенно по объектам гражданской инфраструктуры арабских государств Персидского залива. Руководство нашей страны и лично президент Путин с первых дней подключились к усилиям по деэскалации и прекращению кровопролития как в Иране, так и вокруг него. Однако говорить об атаках по странам региона в отрыве от первопричин нынешней эскалации, а именно агрессии Соединенных Штатов и Израиля против Исламской Республики Иран, невозможно и несправедливо. К глубокому сожалению, принятая только что резолюция выдержана именно в таком предвзятом и одностороннем ключе. В ней перепутаны причинно-следственные связи. Если ее прочитает несведущий в международных делах человек, то у него неизбежно возникнет впечатление, будто Тегеран по собственной воле и злому умыслу совершил ничем не спровоцированное нападение на арабские страны. Атаки по территории самого Ирана, не говоря уже о тех, кто за ними стоит и их осуществляет, в документе не то что не обсуждаются, они просто обходятся стороной. И Совет Безопасности только что под этим подписался. Не упоминается и то, что власти в Тегеране неоднократно подчеркивали, что их ответные действия направлены не против стран региона, а против расположенных на их территории американских военных объектов и инфраструктуры и являются законными целями в рамках права Ирана на самооборону в соответствии со статьей 51 Устава ООН. Нельзя не отметить, что Вашингтон своими агрессивными действиями, по сути, попросту подставил государство залива. Американцы проигнорировали их неоднократные просьбы не использовать территорию арабских стран для проведения военных операций против Ирана. По информации из открытых источников, Соединенные Штаты активно задействуют в этих целях пункты постоянного базирования своих вооруженных сил, в первую очередь в монархиях Персидского залива, причем не в оборонительных или разведывательных, а в наступательных целях. На официальном сайте американского центрального командования еще 28 февраля со ссылкой на его главу Брэда Купера
сообщалось, что высокоточное оружие по иранской территории было запущено не только с воды и воздуха, но и с суши. Очевидно, что речь могла идти только о территории соседних с Ираном стран. Ни для кого не секрет, что американская база в Бахрейне является штаб-квартирой и мозговым центром 5-го флота США, который выступает основной ударной силой против Ирана. База ВВС США Принц Султан Саудовской Аравии – это основной пункт техобслуживания американской авиации в регионе. Крупнейшая военно-воздушная база Улюдейт, расположенная в Катаре, может быть использована не только в качестве важнейшего элемента глобальной системы ПВО США и НАТО, но и для размещения ударных истребителей, бомбардировщиков и заправщиков, а также подавления ПВО и целенаведения. Для этих же целей и сбора разведывательной информации подходит и база Аль-Дафра в Объединенных Арабских Эмиратах. Значительную роль в осуществлении военной операции против Ирана играет также база США в Кувейте, Иордании и Ираке. Все это использует Иран в обосновании своих ударов по американским военным объектам в арабских странах. Безусловный императив защиты гражданских лиц и инфраструктуры в условиях нынешнего конфликта в принятой резолюции также подан весьма однобоко. Удары по мирным жителям и объектам недопустимы ни при каких обстоятельствах и ни в одной стране. Ни в Иране, ни в Бахрейне, ни в Иордании, ни в Катаре, ни в Кувейте, ни в Омане, ни в Саудовской Аравии, ни в Объединенных Арабских Эмиратах, ни в Израиле. Однако из проекта СС АГПЗ можно сделать вывод, что по мирным гражданам Ирана как будто бы никто и не бил. Будто не было чудовищного удара по школе для девочек в Минабе, в результате которого погибло почти 200 детей. Будто не было циничного убийства верховного лидера Ирана Аятоллы Али Хаменеи. Будто не было ударов по объектам мирной ядерной и нефтяной инфраструктуры, грозящих обернуться катастрофическими последствиями, причем не только экономическими, для жителей не только Ирана и соседних стран, но и государств за пределами Ближнего Востока. Авторы проекта попросту предлагают нам закрыть глаза на эти противоправные действия и неспровоцированную агрессию против Ирана со стороны США и Израиля. С самого начала работы над текстом Российская Федерация наряду с китайскими коллегами последовательно доводила эти озабоченности до арабских государств. Мы озвучивали их в ходе неформальных консультаций, а также предоставили авторам и всем остальным членам Совета наши письменные замечания и предложения. В конкретном плане мы предложили авторам следующее. Во-первых, призвать все стороны нынешнего конфликта к прекращению ударов. Во-вторых, осудить удары не только по странам залива, но и по территории Ирана, а также выразить сожаление в связи с атаками на гражданские объекты, которые привели к гибели мирных жителей, и верховного лидера Исламской Республики Иран, и солидарность с народом Ирана в это трудное для него время. В-третьих, потребовать от всех государств отказа от провокаций и любых действий, которые могли бы привести к дальнейшему раскручиванию спирали эскалации. Дополнительно выступили за подтверждение необходимости урегулирования любых споров мирными средствами и сбалансированное указание на то, что право на самооборону в соответствии с Уставом ООН есть не только у арабских государств, но и у Ирана. При этом, несмотря на принципиальную позицию нашей страны, в частности, категорическое осуждение агрессивных действий Соединенных Штатов и Израиля, мы старались выдерживать наши правки в предельно сдержанном ключе, не называя инициаторов нынешнего кризиса по имени. При работе над документом мы руководствовались всего одним соображением – объективностью. Однако авторы проекта резолюции попросту проигнорировали позицию России и Китая. Наибольшее разочарование у нас вызывает отказ внести в текст проекта к политико-дипломатическому регулированию конфликта. Причем сделано это было безапелляционно и без каких-либо пояснений, будто мы говорили в пустоту. Считаем такой подход к работе над продуктами Совета Безопасности ООН неконструктивным, безответственным, неприемлемым и неподобающим для ответственного члена Совета. Господин председатель, принятие подобной резолюции не способно привести к достижению мира в регионе Ближнего Востока. Оно лишь усугубит разногласия между ключевыми игроками в регионе. Опасаются, что страны СС АКПЗ в погоне за осуждением Ирана могут перечеркнуть все достижения последнего времени по восстановлению добрососедских отношений с Тегераном, а также на долгие годы отдалить перспективу формирования пространства общей безопасности для всех стран региона. Более того, положительное решение Совета по данному документу может трактоваться недобросовестными игроками и прежде всего теми, кто развязал эту войну, как благословение на продолжение агрессивных действий против Ирана. Призываем всех членов ООН осознать это. Благодарю вас.
I thank the representative of Russia for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of the United States. Colleagues, as we woke this morning, civilians, families, children were trapped, sheltering in bunkers all over the Middle East. They were wondering if the only thing they could count on today were more missiles and more drones from the Iranian regime. They could not be certain whether they would have the support of the international community. They couldn't be certain if they would have the support of the United Nations Security Council, which frankly, in years past, has failed to speak out about Iran's consistent and grotesque violations of international law. Well, to the people, under the barrage and the constant bombardment of the Iranian regime, the UN Security Council stands with you. 135 countries stand with you. We uniformly condemn Iran's indiscriminate attacks on civilians. Today, you've heard and you'll continue to hear lies, as you always have, from the representative from Iran and their friends on the council. This time, claiming that all of their strikes have been against U.S. military bases or various types of military installation. But here's the hard truth. Here's what they don't want you to hear. And this is common sense, colleagues. The Fairmont Hotel in Dubai, that's not a military base or installation. That's why dozens and dozens of tourists have fled as it was set on fire. Tourists from the United Kingdom, from Liverpool, from other countries, all trying to vacation there, do business there. The civilian airport in Dubai, a global hub of commerce and tourism, also coming under fire. That's not a military installation. At 90 years old, Bahrain's only oil refinery, that's not a military target. Qatar's natural gas facilities that power the economies of the world, those weren't military targets. Even Oman, who until recently was trying to find a diplomatic solution, it's been hit too. Its ports are not military targets. The cargo ships that are being attacked and set aflame, many of them carrying food and other supplies around the world, one of them from Thailand. Those aren't military targets. So look, these attacks were so brutal and so indiscriminate as Iran shoots in all directions that nations that previously had serious disagreements have now joined together. They've now spoken as one voice. Iran's strategy of sowing chaos, of trying to hold their neighbors hostage, trying to shake the resolve of the region has clearly backfired, and that was shown by this vote today. The Kingdom of Bahrain, itself a victim of these attacks, drafted this resolution, led the negotiations on this resolution. Our allies and partners from across the region, Jordan, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and the United Arab Emirates supported it, as well as a UN Security Council record number of co-sponsors, 135, and we read every one of them today so that the entire world could hear it. This is exactly what the United Nations should be about. Today's action is a direct and unequivocal statement from the Gulf countries condemning the brutality of the Iranian regime, whose practice of targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure is reprehensible, and the entire world is calling it out for what it is. Iran is indiscriminately attacking innocent families and civilians living in countries spanning Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, Cyprus, Azerbaijan, Jordan, Iraq, and Turkey. All have felt the consequences of Iran's missiles, drones, and attacks. This council and the international community must speak plainly and be honest with the world about Iran's long history of undermining international peace and security, and for decades, and we all know this, Iran has supported terrorist violence against civilians around the world, and as we all just saw in recent months, massacred its own people. In order to maintain its iron grip on power, the Iranian regime exported instability abroad, turning neighbors like Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and Gaza into battlegrounds and leaving them no hope of peace or prosperity. Earlier today in this council, I challenge any one of you, anyone in the world, to show me a country that is better off because of Iran's intervention and instability. This is why the UN has voted in resolution after resolution that the Iranian regime must never and can never have a nuclear weapon. And by constantly refusing to comply with international safeguards that all of our countries support, Iran's nuclear program was barreling towards a nuclear disaster. The IAEA made clear that there was no reason to have nearly 1,000 pounds of 60% highly enriched uranium unless you wanted to build a nuclear bomb. And no one in this chamber can be surprised by Iran's promise of death to Israel, death to America, and with nuclear weapons, death to the world. And at an emergency meeting in January, not long ago, we raised the Islamic Republic of Iran's decades-old campaign of repression, subjecting its young and old alike to violence, torture, and censorship. Colleagues, the Iranian regime's abuses are a stain for all who tolerate it, drawn from the blood of their victims. President Trump and his team exhausted every attempt at diplomatic negotiations. He sought peace and to end 47 years of hostility and attacks, while Iran only sought more missiles, more drones, and a pathway to nuclear Armageddon. President Trump has drawn his red line here. Iran crossed it once again, and now the world is facing the consequences. And these consequences that the United States does not bring alone. We are grateful to our partners, Bahrain, who have bravely pushed this resolution forward. We are grateful to the 135 countries that co-sponsored it, and we will never hesitate to hold the Iranian regime to account for its continuing threats to international peace and security. I thank you. I will now resume my duties as Council President. The representative of Bahrain has asked for the floor to make a further statement.
شكرا السيد الرئيس، وعذرا على أخذ الكلمة مرة أخرى. أود أن أعرب عن الأسف لما تضمنته كلمة سعادة المندوب الدائم لروسيا الاتحادية عن دول مجلس التعاون. وأود أن أوضح أن دول مجلس التعاون هي من قامت بالعديد من الوساطات والجهود الدبلوماسية، ولم تكن يوما أراضي تصدر عنها أي اعتداءات، ولم تستخدم ضد أي دول أخرى. وأنا أتحدث إليكم الآن وصفارات الإنذار تدوي في منطقتنا وعلى دولنا. لذلك فالادعاءات الإيرانية يكذبها الواقع، فالضربات لا تزال متوالية وموجهة إلى المواقع المدنية والحيوية وتجاه المدنيين. وشكرا سيد الرئيس.
I thank the representative of Bahrain for the statement. The Council is ready to proceed to the vote on the second draft resolution before it. I now give the floor to those members of the Council who wish to make statements before the vote. I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Господин председатель, мы сегодня уже обозначили неконструктивный характер только что одобренной резолюции с осуждением ударов Ирана по территории стран региона, выдержанной в однобоком ключе, и дополнительное разъяснение представителя Бахрейна нас в обратном не убеждает. Сейчас Российская Федерация призывает членов Совета Безопасности принять беспристрастный документ, направленный на срочную деэскалацию ситуации. Это позволит Совету исполнить свои прямые обязанности по поддержанию международного мира и безопасности. Подготовленный нашей страной проект оставляет за скобками противоречия между членами Совета по вопросу о причинах нынешней беспрецедентной напряженности на Ближнем Востоке. Он носит прямой, простой и недвусмысленный характер и содержит 4 постановляющих пункта. Первый. Призыв ко всем сторонам конфликта немедленно прекратить боевые действия и воздержаться от любых шагов, которые могли бы привести к дальнейшей эскалации в регионе и за его пределами. Второй. Категорическое осуждение любых ударов по мирным жителям и гражданским объектам и привлечение внимания к обязательствам сторон в соответствии с международным правом, включая международное гуманитарное право. Третье. Указание на важность обеспечения безопасности всех, без исключения, государств региона. Четвертый. Настоятельный призыв ко всем сторонам немедленно вернуться за стол переговоров. Убеждены, что упомянутые элементы в полной мере отражают мнение членов Совета Безопасности в связи с текущими событиями, в том числе озвученные в ходе заседания Совета 28 февраля. При этом при подготовке проекта мы сознательно не стали упоминать ни одну из сторон. Мы прекрасно отдаем себе отчет в том, что такой подход сделал бы невозможным достижение консенсуса и, как следствие, помешал бы скорейшему направлению Советом принципиально важного сигнала о необходимости немедленной деэскалации и сдержанности всех конфликтующих сторон. В ходе работы над проектом Российская Федерация распространила документ под письменные комментарии членов Совета и провела очные неформальные консультации. Отмечаем, что ни одна делегация не озвучила каких-либо возражений или озабоченностей в отношении самого текста. В этом контексте мы рассчитываем, что все коллеги продемонстрируют ответственность и выступят в поддержку российского проекта, который может стать своевременным и крайне необходимым шагом для политико-дипломатического регулирования ситуации на Ближнем Востоке. Благодарю вас.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for his statement. I shall now put to the vote the draft resolution contained in document S/2026/159 submitted by the Russian Federation. Will those in favor of the draft resolution contained in document S/2026/159 please raise their hand? Those against? Abstentions? The result of the voting is as follows: 4 votes in favor, 2 votes against, 9 abstentions. The draft resolution has not been adopted, having failed to obtain the required number of votes. I now give the floor to those members of the council who wish to make statements after the vote. I give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. The United Kingdom's priority is restoring regional stability in the Middle East as soon as possible and preventing this crisis escalating further. Iran's ongoing reckless attacks against countries across the region threaten to expand the conflict. That's why the UK voted in favour of the resolution tabled by Bahrain condemning Iran's attacks against the territories of its neighbours. That text was grounded in the facts and backed by the region, responding directly to the needs of our partners in the Gulf and Jordan. It focused squarely on protecting civilians and restoring regional stability, and we're pleased that this Council was able to send a clear condemnation of Iran's reckless attacks by adopting that resolution. By contrast, this Russian resolution does nothing to address the concerns of those in the region who have faced unprovoked and unjustifiable attacks. And it is impossible to overlook the hypocrisy of Russia presenting itself here as a guardian of international peace and security. It continues to reject Ukraine's proposal for a ceasefire. It attacks Ukraine's civilian infrastructure night after night. With the very same Iranian-designed Shahed drones that are now striking targets across the Middle East and beyond. In return for Iran's support, Russia has provided Iran with advanced military capabilities, increasing the threat that Iran poses to the region. We should be in no doubt where Russia stands in this conflict. So Russia's resolution would have only served to distract this Council from the serious work required to end the conflict. That is why the UK did not support the resolution. Our collective priority must be to secure stability in the region and the protection of civilian life. That's what the UK government has been focusing on and will continue to do alongside our allies, including in this Council. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Président, la France n'a pas soutenu le projet de résolution présenté par la Russie sur la situation au Moyen-Orient. Je l'ai dit tout à l'heure en expliquant notre vote sur le projet de résolution déposé par Bahreïn et adopté à une très forte majorité. La France est profondément préoccupée par la prolongation de la guerre au Moyen-Orient. Nous partageons la conviction exprimée par de nombreux membres de ce Conseil que l'escalade militaire n'est pas dans l'intérêt de la région, que le respect du droit international est la condition sine qua non de la stabilité à long terme et que les hostilités doivent cesser au plus vite. Nous appelons également à la préservation des vies civiles et au respect du droit international humanitaire. Monsieur le Président, quoi qu'il se réclame des intentions les plus louables, le projet de texte initié par la Russie ne constituait pas une base viable pour rassembler le Conseil et apporter à cette crise la réponse que les circonstances exigent. Le résultat du vote en témoigne d'ailleurs. En effet, ce projet de résolution ne disait rien de la responsabilité écrasante prise par l'Iran dans l'escalade actuelle, y compris en conduisant des attaques indiscriminées et injustifiées contre ses voisins régionaux qui ne le menaçaient pas. L'intervention de la Fédération de Russie pour justifier son vote sur la résolution 2817 a d'ailleurs marqué une forme de compréhension de ce pays pour les frappes iraniennes. Or, l'Iran fait peser des menaces depuis des années sur son environnement régional et sur la paix et la sécurité internationale. Il le fait à travers le réseau des milices qu'il finance, commande et entraîne dans la région, à travers ses programmes de missiles balistiques et son programme nucléaire dont l'Agence internationale de l'énergie atomique n'est pas en mesure de garantir le caractère pacifique. Et ceci, rappelons-le, dans le contexte de sa négation pure et simple, absolument inacceptable, de l'existence même d'Israël. La stabilité de la région ne pourra être durablement garantie si ces menaces ne sont pas traitées. Monsieur le Président, c'est par la diplomatie et par elle seule que la sécurité et la stabilité de la région pourront être assurées sur le long terme. Pour que la diplomatie puisse prévaloir, il faut que l'Iran entende le message de la résolution 2817, qu'il accepte d'entrer dans des négociations de bonne foi pour aboutir à un encadrement négocié de ses programmes nucléaires et balistiques, ainsi que de ses activités régionales. La France continuera de se mobiliser pour parvenir à une telle solution négociée. Je vous remercie.
I thank the representative of France for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of China.
主席，俄罗斯提出的决议草案重申联合国宪章宗旨和原则，敦促各方立即停止军事行动，谴责所有针对平民和民用设施的袭击，鼓励各方回归外交谈判轨道，内容原则平衡。中方表示欢迎和支持，对决议草案未获通过感到失望和遗憾。这是一场本不应发生的战争，也是一场对各方都没有好处的战争。中东的历史反复告诉世人，武力不是解决问题的方法，兵戎相见只会增添新的仇恨，酝酿新的危机。当务之急是立即停止军事行动，防止战火升级蔓延，尽快重回对话谈判。中方将继续为争取和平做出努力。谢谢主席。
I thank the representative of China for his statement. I give the floor to the representative of Bahrain.
سيد الرئيس، تود مملكة البحرين أن تتقدم بخالص الشكر والتقدير إلى روسيا الاتحادية الصديقة على مبادرتها بتقديم مشروع القرار المتعلق بالتصعيدات الخطيرة في منطقة الشرق الأوسط، وتثمن هذه المبادرة التي تعكس حرص روسيا الاتحادية على الإسهام في تناول التطورات المتسارعة في المنطقة. وفي الوقت الذي تقدر فيه مملكة البحرين هذه الجهود، فقد صوتت بالامتناع عن دعم مشروع القرار المطروح نظرا لكونه جاء بصيغة عامة لا تعكس بصورة كافية طبيعة التصعيد العسكري الخطير الذي تشهده المنطقة في الآونة الأخيرة نتيجة للاعتداءات الإيرانية غير المبررة والتي تستحق الإدانة التي طالت بلادي ودول مجلس التعاون لدول الخليج العربية والمملكة الأردنية الهاشمية في انتهاك واضح لمبادئ حسن الجوار واحترام سيادة الدول وخرق جسيم لأحكام القانون الدولي وميثاق الأمم المتحدة. وانطلاقا من مسؤولياتها كدولة معنية بشكل مباشر بتطورات الأوضاع في المنطقة، فقد فضلنا إعطاء الأولوية لمشروع القرار الذي تقدمنا به باسم دول مجلس التعاون لدول الخليج العربي والمملكة الأردنية الهاشمية، والذي يسعى إلى تناول التطورات الراهنة بصورة أكثر تحديداً وواقعية بما يعكس طبيعة التحديات الأمنية التي تواجهها دول المنطقة. وفي هذا السياق تعول مملكة البحرين على دعم المجتمع الدولي لمشروع للقرار الذي تقدمنا به واعتمده مجلس الأمن، ونعرب عن امتناننا العميق لجميع الدول الأعضاء بالأمم المتحدة مرة أخرى والتي شاركت في رعاية هذا القرار والتي بلغ عددها 135 دولة، حيث أن هذا الدعم الواسع من المجتمع الدولي يعكس إدراكا جماعيا لخطورة العدوان الإيراني الغاشم الذي تعرضت له مملكة البحرين ودول مجلس التعاون لدول الخليج العربية والمملكة الأردنية الهاشمية خلال 12 يوما الماضية. وشكرا سيد الرئيس.
I thank the representative of Bahrain for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Denmark.
President, Denmark abstained on the draft resolution presented by Russia today, as Denmark does not consider that the Russian Federation introduced this resolution in good faith. The resolution put forward by the Kingdom of Bahrain represent a genuine effort to respond to the concerns of the region and contribute meaningfully to de-escalation in the Middle East. That resolution, which the Council has just adopted, has a clear operational focus guided by the region, which should be the direction of our collective efforts. We regret that, rather than being guided by the voices of the region, and indeed by the overwhelming support expressed across the wider UN membership, the Russian Federation has instead chosen to table a new text that diverts the Council's attention away from that broad support. It is well known that Iran for years has been destabilizing factor in the region and beyond. Now, the regime in Tehran continues its destructive behavior by attacking countries in the region, including civilians and civilian objects, disrupting maritime security, and threatening regional stability, international peace and security, and the global economy. None of this is reflected in Russia's draft resolution. For this reason, Denmark did not support the resolution presented by Russia today. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Denmark for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of Latvia.
Thank you, President. Latvia voted against the resolution submitted by the Russian Federation for the following reasons. Latvia unequivocally supports the fundamental principles of the Charter of the United Nations recalled in this text, including the prohibition of the use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, as well as the international law, including international humanitarian law, protecting civilians and civilian infrastructure. And we share the deep concern regarding the current escalation of hostilities in the Middle East and beyond. However, we could not support the presented draft, as it was tabled by a permanent member of this Council, which itself is violating daily for years the very principles it now calls upon others to respect. The aggression, use of force against territorial integrity, and political independence, continued attacks against civilian infrastructure and civilians carried out by Russia in Ukraine stand in total contradiction to the commitments invoked in this draft. It is cynical and represents hypocrisy of the highest order. Iran is now attacking civilians and civilian infrastructure in the region and beyond with the same weapons it is supplying to Russia to attack civilians in Ukraine. So we agree this is not a resolution submitted in good faith, and despite our agreement with the values and objectives outlined in the text, Latvia was compelled to vote against. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Latvia for the statement. I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Господин председатель, глубоко разочарованы тем, что сегодня Совету Безопасности не удалось принять столь востребованную резолюцию, сфокусированную на необходимости деэскалации на Ближнем Востоке и возвращения к поиску переговорных решений. Хотели бы выразить признательность тем коллегам, которые выступили за принятие предложенного Россией документа. Считаем, что они повели себя ответственно и принципиально, как и подобает членам Совета Безопасности. Увы, некоторые коллеги так и не нашли в себе сил и мудрости принять единственное верное решение. А ряд из них это сделал целенаправленно. Ведь для них главное шагать в ногу со старшим братом и слушать все его команды. Они только что отклонили возможность направить по линии Совета недвусмысленные требования к немедленному прекращению боевых действий и урегулированию любых споров мирными средствами. Это в очередной раз наглядно показывает, что все громкие заявления этих стран о приверженности международному праву, Уставу ООН и миру не более чем пустой звук. Их позиция определяется сугубо конъюнктурными политическими интересами и блоковой солидарностью, а также боязнью попасть в немилость к старшим товарищам. Более того, из этих соображений они готовы пойти на дальнейший подрыв авторитета Совета Безопасности. Весьма показательно, что ни одна из выступивших против или воздержавшихся делегаций так и не смогла объяснить, чем именно не устроил их подготовленный нами текст. Дежурные заявления наподобие важности сфокусироваться на резолюции, предложенной Бахрейном и странами СС-АКПЗ, не выдерживают никакой критики. Российский проект никоим образом не противоречил документу стран региона и не содержал никаких взаимоисключающих по отношению к нему элементов. Поэтому подобные слова – это не более чем нелепая попытка оправдаться за боязнь выступить в поддержку инициативы, сколь бы взвешенной и деполитизированной она ни была, а только потому, что она невыгодна истинным зачинщикам кровавых событий на Ближнем Востоке. Еще более опасно, если за их решением скрываются иные геополитические цели. Ответственность за любые негативные последствия на Земле, которые может повлечь за собой недобросовестность и безответственность некоторых членов Совета, лежит целиком и полностью на них. Это голосование лакмусовая бумажка и, простите за выражение, проверка на вшивость. Нам любопытно, неужели те страны, которые не поддержали эту резолюцию, не понимают, насколько жалко они выглядят? Мы уже говорили, что это даже не двойные стандарты. Это сюрреализм, зазеркалье и театр абсурда. Да и вообще просто позор. Мы теперь будем постоянно напоминать вам об этом, когда в иных ситуациях вы будете выдавать себя за поборников международного права. Вне зависимости от исхода сегодняшнего голосования, Россия продолжит прилагать все возможные усилия для скорейшего прекращения конфронтации на Ближнем Востоке и урегулирования любых противоречий мирными средствами. Будем всячески содействовать странам региона и другим сторонам конфликта. Рассчитываем на аналогичный подход со стороны здравомыслящих и конструктивно настроенных государств-членов. Благодарю вас.
I thank the representative of Russia for the statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as the representative of the United States. Colleagues, the Russian Federation knew It did not have the votes to adopt its resolution today, yet it insisted on proceeding to a vote. And once again, Russia is acting here at the Security Council to protect its partner, Iran. We reject Russia's attempt to conflate lawful U.S. actions taken in line with Article 51 of the UN Charter, to conflate those actions with Iran's pattern of bloodshed and brutality to its own people and around the world, and with its recent deliberate and at scale targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure across the Gulf and the Middle East. The United States will continue to work here at this council and beyond to hold the Iranian regime to account and to bring to light its destabilizing and unlawful actions. Russia's attempts to prevent this council from acting in line with its core principles will not deter us. I thank you, and I resume my function as president of the council, and I now give the floor to the representative of Iran under Rule 37.
In the name of God, the compassionate and merciful, colleagues, at the outset, I must express our profound regret over the Council's action today. This is a deeply regrettable day for the Security Council and for the international community. Today's adoption is a serious setback to the Council's credibility and leaves a lasting stain on its record. Today's action represents a blatant misuse of the Security Council mandate in pursuit of the political agendas of the certain members. The very state responsible for the brutal war of aggression against my country, the regime of the United States, sits on the other side of this chamber as President of the Council, abusing its position while obstructing every effort to bring an end to this barbaric war against the Iranian people and preventing the Council from fulfilling its charter-based responsibilities. Let me make it clear. This resolution is a manifest injustice against my country, the main victim of a clear act of aggression. It distorts the realities on the ground and deliberately ignores the root causes of the current crisis. The very purpose of this biased and politically motivated text, which was pushed by Israeli regime and the United States, is clear: to reverse the roles and position of victims and aggressors. It rewards the regimes of the United States and Israel, which have violated the UN Charter and committed acts of aggression. In doing so, it established impunity and sent a wrong message to the international community, emboldening the aggressors to commit further crimes. Accordingly, we do not recognize the Council's action today. We consider it unjust and unlawful, inconsistent with the United Nations Charter and international law, and an action that completely disregards the established principles governing determination of acts of aggression and breach of the peace. Make no mistake, today it is Iran, tomorrow it could be any other sovereign state. We thank Russia and China for their constructive efforts. Those members that voted in favor of this resolution, particularly the European members of the Council, including France, United Kingdom, Greece, Denmark, and Latvia, have demonstrated that their repeated claims of defending the UN Charter and the principles of international law are nothing more than empty words and hollow rhetoric. These members lacked even the minimal courage to acknowledge the perpetrators of the aggression, Israel and the United States. While concerning the violation of the Charter and international law and speaking of the international peace and security, by deliberately ignoring the flagrant violation of the most fundamental principles of the UN Charter, the prohibition of the use of force, these members have once again shown that for them, respect for the Charter and international law is selective and subordinate to political agenda. The hypocritical and irresponsible conduct once again demonstrate that political consideration take precedence over the professed commitment to international law and the UN Charter. It is evident that these countries are simply implementing political instruction from Washington rather than exercising independent judgment and decision. Regrettably, some members distorting the reality and facts on the grounds and made a cynical and blatant attempt to blame Iran and accuse and condemn Iran while ignoring the root causes of the current situation, whitewashing the US and Israeli heinous crimes and military aggression, especially the massacre of 170 school girls in Minab, as it was Iran that initiated this war. We categorically and strongly reject all the baseless and politically motivated accusations made by some members against my country, which are entirely devoid of any legal foundation. The aim of this accusation is clear: to distort the reality, deflect the attention of the international community from war crimes and crimes against humanity that have been and are being committed against the people of Iran by the Israeli regime and the United States. But the facts prove otherwise and speak loudly and clearly. Against this backdrop, I now wish to emphasize the following points. First, the root cause of the current situation are clear and simple. On 28 February, the United States and Israel regime launched a military attack against the Islamic Republic of Iran in flagrant violation of Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the United Nations Charter and the preventory norm prohibiting aggression. This is an illegal, illegitimate, and unprovoked war began with the cowardly terrorist assassination of the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the highest official of the sovereign member state of the United Nations, along with several senior state officials, and resulted in the deaths and injuries of thousands of civilians. This aggression was accompanied by coordinated attacks on both military and civilian infrastructure, including schools, hospitals, residential buildings, sports facilities, public service centers, and relief facilities across the country. These acts constitute grave violation of international law and serious breach of international humanitarian law. Senior officials of the aggressor states, including the President of the United States and criminal Prime Minister of Israel, have publicly acknowledged and justified this attack, thereby openly admitting responsibility for this unlawful act of aggression. Since 28 February, the continued military strike by the United States and the Israeli regime have martyred more than 1,348 civilians, including women and children, more than 17,000 civilians injured, and destroyed or damaged 19,734 civilian sites. These include 16,191 residential homes, 1,617 commercial and service centers, 77 medical and pharmaceutical facilities, 65 schools and educational institutions, 16 Red Cross buildings, and multiple energy infrastructure facilities. The scale and systematic nature of this attack clearly constitute war crimes and crime against humanity. Second, in response to this deliberate and unjustified aggression, the Islamic Republic of Iran has exercised and continues to exercise its inherent right of self-defense in accordance with Article 51 of the United Nations Charter to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity. And in light of the failure of the United Nations Security Council to discharge its duty and responsibilities under the Charter of the United Nations, has undertaken necessary and proportionate defensive operation against the bases and facilities of the aggressors in the region. Such action are lawful under international law and have been clearly and repeatedly warned of in advance through various channels and at different levels. Our response is lawful, necessary, and proportionate. Iran targets only the military objective of the aggressors. Our assessment indicates that some of these incidents may have resulted from interception by the United States defense system, which could have diverted from intended military targets. Third, since the beginning of this aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran by the United States and Israeli regime, the aggressors have also used the territories and facilities of certain third states in the region to launch unlawful military attack. Under the fundamental principle of international law, states are prohibited from knowingly allowing their territory to be used directly or indirectly to cause damage to other states. In addition, UN General Assembly Resolution 3314 of 14 December 1974, Article 3F, has clearly categorized and recognized that the action of a state in allowing its territory, which it has placed at the disposal of another state, to be used by that state for perpetrating an act of aggression against the third state as an act of aggression. Furthermore, as a principle of international law emanating from the jus cogens character of the prohibition of aggression, states must undertake all necessary measures to prevent foreign armed forces based in their territory from committing acts of aggression against other states and must not facilitate or support such acts. It is evident that in the event of the breach of this fundamental obligation, a state whose territory has been used to carry out acts of aggression against a third state bears international legal responsibility, including responsibility for reparation of direct and indirect damage resulting from such attack. Similarly, the measures claimed to have been taken by the United Kingdom and certain other states outside the region under pretext of a so-called right of individual or collective self-defense are devoid of any legal basis and are wholly unjustifiable under international law. Such action may themselves constitute acts of aggression. Moreover, these states have deliberately refrained from identifying the original aggressors, namely the United States and Israeli regime, and have in effect attempted to reverse the roles of victims and aggressor. Fourth, the aggressors, in particular the United States, are under an obligation to make full reparation for the injury caused by the ongoing violation against Iran and its citizens, including any damage incurred. Furthermore, the individual criminal responsibility of the President of the United States and any other U.S. official and individuals involved in grave breach of international humanitarian law, including for directing deliberate attack against civilians and launching willful attacks against civilian objects, is beyond doubt. Fifth, the Islamic Republic of Iran remains committed to maintaining friendly relations with the countries in the Persian Gulf region based on mutual respect, the principle of good neighborliness, and respect for each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Iran re-emphasized that its defense operation targeting United States military bases and facilities in the region are in no way against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the regional countries. Also, the Israeli regime has succeeded in dragging the United States into a regional conflict. Iran's relations with neighbors are rooted in long-standing historical, cultural, and geographical ties. Once the current tension diminish, Iran and its neighbors countries will inevitably return to their traditional relation of cooperation, mutual respect, and good neighborliness. Iran, as a co-founder of the UN and responsible member, has consistently honored its obligation, respected international law and freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz, and the claim that Iran has closed the strait is simply untrue. Meanwhile, Iran will never abandon its right under international law to protect its sovereignty, territorial integrity, national and vital interests as it deems necessary. Sixth, the Council must confront the real source of the threat, to the regional and international peace and security and act without delay to stop this bloody war against the Iranian people. It must compel the aggressors, the United States and Israel, to immediately cease all military attacks against Iran, including against civilians and civilian infrastructure, and ensure full accountability for these grave violations of international humanitarian law and war crimes. Thank you.
The representative of Iran made a statement. I give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Thank you, Mr. President. In the past day, the Iranian regime has fired missiles and drones not only at Israel, but across the region, at Israel, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, Iraq, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Cyprus. And this is what the regime is doing before it has nuclear weapons. Imagine what it would do if it had them. This is not just about the joint US-Israel campaign. This is a regime attacking its neighbors. That is why we welcome the initiative of the Gulf Cooperation Council states condemning these attacks. Their message is clear. Targeting civilians is wrong. Targeting cities is wrong. And Iran must stop. But what we are seeing today did not begin 2 weeks ago for Israel. It did not begin on February 28. It did not begin last year during the 12-day war. It began all the way back in 1979, when the regime in Tehran made the destruction of the US and Israel parts of its mission, ideology. For 47 years, this regime has armed terror organizations across the Middle East. It has spread violence across the region. It has targeted Israeli civilians through cowardly proxy attacks. And today, it races toward nuclear capability while building the missiles to deliver it. This is not a new crisis. It is a result of decades of aggression. For decades, the international community tried diplomacy. Negotiations were attempted. Channels remained open, but diplomacy requires honesty, not what we just heard from the representative from Iran. Iran used diplomacy as cover. While diplomats spoke, centrifuges span. While negotiations were held, the regime fortified its nuclear program. Facilities were buried deep underground. Complexes were carved into mountains to shield them from consequences. At the same time, Iran rebuilt its ballistic missile program. Before this joint operation began, Iran was again producing dozens of ballistic missiles every month. Missiles capable of carrying warheads weighing up to 1 ton. Missiles capable of reaching targets across the Middle East and even to parts of Europe. Iran has enriched uranium to 60%. It possesses more than 460 kilograms at that level alone, an amount when they negotiated with Special Envoy Witkoff, they admitted that they have this amount and they can produce 11 nuclear bombs. They confirmed they control this stockpile, and that was the starting point of the negotiation position. No civilian nuclear program requires enrichment to 60%. None. And peaceful nuclear programs do not hide critical facilities deep inside mountains. Yet here at the UN, we hear a very different story. We just heard a very long speech. The representative of Iran tells us their nuclear program is exclusively peaceful. Ambassador Avani says Iran is only targeting military sites. You just heard him. He said it. Mr. President, that is simply not true. Mr. Iravani, you and your regime are lying to all of us. You say you are only targeting military targets. How can you say that? We are not stupid. I know it. I know it because your missiles target cities in Israel where my daughters are now, where my mother lives. And the representatives from the Gulf states sitting here today can tell you the same thing. They have seen the cowardly attacks on civilians, airports. Iranian missiles and drones have struck ports, infrastructure, hotels across the region. These are not military targets. These are civilian sites. And you think if you write a letter every day repeating the same lies, people will start to believe you. It will not work for you. Over the past week, Iran's representative has sent letter after letter to the Security Council. In fact, here they are, 15 letters, one at least every day, each repeating the same accusations, letters that even blame Israel and the US. You know, you have the audacity to call us terrorists. Mr. Iravani, before making such accusations, you might want to look in the mirror. The regime you represent fires missiles at civilians across the region and then writes letters claiming victimhood. The only letter you should write is an apology to the Iranian people, and maybe after you should request a political asylum. That's the only letter you should write. Mr. President, peaceful regimes do not enrich uranium to 60% and stockpile hundreds of kilograms of it. Peaceful regimes do not hide nuclear facilities deep inside mountains. And peaceful regimes do not build ballistic missiles capable of carrying 1-ton warheads across the region and into Europe. Israel remains committed to protecting our people, defending our region, and ensuring that the Iranian regime never acquires nuclear weapons. Thank you.
I thank the representative for the statement. I shall now make a further statement in my capacity as a representative of the United States. And in that regard, I want to be perfectly clear and polite that there has been some misrepresentation here today, so I just want to clear one thing up. The accusation that this resolution put forward by the Kingdom of Bahrain, supported by every member of the GCC, and I see all of them here today, and supported by 135 countries, the most co-sponsors of a UN Security Council resolution ever, was somehow manipulated by one or two countries is laughable. We urge Iran to hear the voice of the Council, of this resolution that saw no opposition today, and of the entire international community. But more importantly, we urge Iran to listen to its own brave people and stop the indiscriminate attacks on civilians across the Middle East. I thank you. I will resume my function as President of the Council. The representative of Iran has asked for the floor to make a further statement. I give them the floor.
I would be brief. A lot of these countries you mentioned in private tell us that they are compelled to be a co-sponsor of this resolution, and in really they are going to accept it. As I stated in my statement, it is an illegal and legitimate and aggressive war imposed on my country by the regime of the United States and Israel. The United States has violated UN Charter and fundamental principles of international law. Iran is the victim of this war, not the aggressor. the aggressor is the US and Israel. As long as the Security Council remains unable to fulfill its responsibility to maintain international peace and security, Iran has no choice but to continue to exercise its inherent right to self-defense, to safeguard and defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity, as well as vital interests. Countries in the region, instead of blaming Iran, should place pressure on the true aggressor, the United States and Israel. The US, together with the Israeli regime, deliberately and indiscriminately targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure across my country. One stark example of these heinous crimes is the killing of 170 schoolgirls in Minab. This constitutes a war crime. Just today, the US announced its intention to target all port facilities where Iranian naval forces operate. This action is a blatant war crime. Thank you.
There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers, and this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you for coming. I wanted to reach you on another issue first. On another issue. On March 10, the neo-Nazi regime in Kiev committed yet another barbaric crime against the civilian population of our country by carrying out a missile strike. A missile, you hear me? Louder? Can I raise the mic?
Not from there, but I told him downstairs.
Okay. On March 10, the neo-Nazi regime in Kiev committed yet another barbaric crime against the civilian population of our country by carrying out a missile strike on Bryansk. a busy business district located in close proximity to multi-apartment residential buildings, children's goods stores, a university and other civilian infrastructure came under deliberate attack. As a result of this strike, 7 people were killed and 42 were injured. The expired head of the regime, Zelensky, speaking to the press, described this heinous attack as a successful operation and thanked the armed forces of Ukraine for their service. This is yet another striking example of the sheer cynicism with which the Kyiv authorities treat attacks that claim lives of civilians. The strike was carried out with the use of at least 7 long-range British Storm Shadow missiles. It is entirely obvious, and we have repeatedly pointed this out, that such an operation would be technically impossible for the Ukrainian armed forces to conduct on their own. The use of advanced Western weaponry takes place only with the direct involvement of foreign specialists who guide the targeting. In addition, certain NATO countries provide the necessary intelligence data. As such, the Western sponsors of Zelensky bear full responsibility for the killing of civilians. Instead of giving peace negotiations facilitated by the United States a genuine chance, Kyiv and London are seeking ways to further escalate tensions. This tactic is not new. It has been repeatedly employed whenever a real prospect of settlement begins to emerge. It is hardly a coincidence that the timing of this attack coincided with signals from Washington expressing hope that negotiations on the Ukrainian settlement have reached a turning point, I quote, and that achieving peace is entirely possible. Regrettably, international organizations have once again remained blind and deaf to what has happened. Yesterday, during the daily noon briefing, the spokesman of the UN Secretary General mentioned the issue only in passing and only after being asked a direct question. Even then, he stated that he, I quote, hasn't seen that particular report, limiting himself to a general remark that UN is against such attacks. But where is clear and unequivocal condemnation of this crime? Where is the statement from the Secretary General himself? The continued silence on this and similar grave incidents raises serious questions about the impartiality and consistency of the organization's approach. We call on the UN Secretariat to abandon the policy of double standards and to provide an appropriate, clear, and unequivocal assessment of this heinous attack. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I have a question on the war in Iran. Russia is a close ally of Iran, and President Putin has talked to President Trump and many other leaders. Does Russia see itself playing any kind of a role in negotiations to end this war? Are there talks going on, and if so, how serious are they?
There are no negotiations, as you know. Negotiations were held before the aggression started, and it started right when negotiations were proceeding, and Iran was ready to continue negotiating. But it was a premeditated, deliberate attack, which U.S. confessed in. They said later that they were planning it despite all these negotiations that were taking place. Now, as far as I know, there are no negotiations, although Iran expressed willingness for negotiations.
Mr. Ambassador, this is Namo Abdullah with Rudaw Media Network. Namo Abdullah with Rudaw Media Network. One question on, on the Strait of Hormuz.
On what?
On the Strait of Hormuz. For how long do you expect it to stay closed? And is Russia willing to offer help to make sure it remains open?
The Strait of Hormuz is not our territorial waters. I don't think we can we can do anything on that thing. The threats to close the Strait of Hormuz is a direct consequence of what is going on in Iran. What will happen to it, I don't know, but the maritime traffic in that part of the world, a very important one, has been not just severely reduced, but basically halted, which told immediately on the economic situation, on the situation with the carbohydrates, on the situation with the prices, and that is very sad. As I said today in the statement, that the countries of the region, and not just the region, but of the entire world, will feel the consequences, and not just economic, of what is happening in the Middle East.
Ambassador, it's Pamela Falk from U.S. News and World Report. Reflect on the vote right now, the vote on your draft resolution on Iran. Why do you think the other resolution got so much support, and why do you think yours did not?
The other resolution is a clear invitation for the aggressors to continue what they are doing. It is unbalanced. I said we offered very fair amendments to it, which were completely ignored. We were reassured by our Gulf friends that they have nothing against our draft, although today we saw the results of the voting. Some of the members, in particular those who voted against it, explained it by laughable pretext that Russia doesn't have the right to promote any resolution in the Security Council, thus betraying themselves. Our resolution is very neutral to the gravity of the situation that we are witnessing. We avoided any mentioning of, deliberately avoided any mentioning of who, when, why, but we just called for the early resolution of the crisis and for going back to the political and diplomatic means of resolving it.
Thank you.
Why didn't you veto the resolution, and do you realize this will be a disappointment for Iran?
There are many disappointments in the world on many issues. You know, the thing is that we recognize that the Gulf countries suffer sometimes. What suffers not just the American bases that are located in these countries, but the civilians and the civilian infrastructure, which we do not appreciate, and we say about it openly, and we understand the sentiment of the Gulf countries about it. But the problem is that, as I said, the cause and the consequences in the resolution are put upside down.
Thank you, Ambassador. A quick follow-up on the Middle East. Are there any plans to propose another draft resolution? And on Ukraine, do you have any plans to call for?
To propose another draft resolution on what?
On the Middle East.
On the Middle East, we just had one. You saw the result. Let's see how it goes. We don't know what will happen next, and we'll be guided by the development of the events.
And on Ukraine, any plans to call for an urgent meeting for Security Council?
No.
Thanks.
Ambassador Stefano Vaccara, Ital Press, La Voce di New York. According to President Trump, he had a phone conversation with President Putin, where President Putin told him that he was going to help. Now,
he offered help.
Yeah, he offered he was going to help. But today we saw in the Security Council that where is this help? Whose fault is that at the moment Russia is trying to help the United States. The United States is not getting this help, doesn't want this help. What's happening?
Helping is not appeasing. We are calling a spade a spade. We're calling things by the name, but we are ready to help to get out of the dire situation the whole region and the United States itself got itself into.
Ambassador, neither resolution mentioned the United States and Israel's role in this war. You're saying that was a deliberate step by Russia. Was that also, in your view, a deliberate step by the Bahrain resolution? It's just a little strange to read the resolution and not name who the perpetrators are.
Two things. First, there is a convention in the Security Council, and you know it pretty well, that no permanent member will ever vote against itself in a resolution that mentions its name, and that's life. You may laugh at it, but this is how it works. Secondly, we proposed amendments that didn't mention the name, but that didn't mention the names, but it offered solutions. So I think that we didn't violate either the convention or the essence.
Ambassador Maryam Ramati with Iran International. There are some reports that suggest that Russia is giving intelligence to the Islamic Republic of Iran.
You're asking the wrong person. I'm not in the intelligence business.
Thank you.
I think. Thank you.